you so much for joining me on the Pilot Talk podcast. I am thrilled to be here today with an adventurer, if I've ever met one. Kevin Singh is going to talk to us today about the global line of aircraft, and I can't be more pleased to have him here. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Renee. Feels good. The first time I'm giving a podcast like this, so I am ready.
Good. I'm going to ask you all sorts of really hard questions and see if I can make you sweat.
I'm ready to be an astronaut. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. I saw a little Cowboys logo on the back of your headrest there, so I know we're friends already.
He's suffering for the last 17 years.
Fantastic. You've been through good times and bad with that for sure. Hey, okay, so not talking about sports, let's talk about airplanes. Tell me about how long you've been flying globals and which model or models you've flown. I'm interested to hear your experiences.
So I started off with a Bombardier line, which was the Bombardier Challenger 604 and 605. And then I saw the need for the Global Express that can't come out with the Global 5000, which was the Vision Cockpit, and the 6000. So I have flown the 5000 with the Vision Cockpit and also the 6000, the global lines. And I currently also fly the Challenger 605.
Great. Well, we're going to dive into the 605 on a different podcast recording, but let's focus just on the global right now. What's been your experience overall with that? And then we'll get into a little bit more of the performance and operating experiences you've had.
Sure. So basically, compared to what happened flying before, this was the most advanced avionics that I have flown. You know, I had the synthetic vision, the head-up display, the flight director was different. It was the Proline Vision cockpit, and you know, everything that a pilot wanted to see by the pedestal as the PFD and the MFD, it was so ergonomical, so user-friendly that I just fell in love with the airplane. But I'd never flown a 1,000 square foot apartment. I mean, that's what they call it. It's a 100-foot wingspan and 100-foot fuselage, and that's a 1,000 square foot apartment that you're flying out there. And such a beautiful airplane to fly and handle. I just fell in love with it. It's the best airplane that I've flown so far.
Are there any special skills or special touch that you feel like the Global requires?
No, it's a very forgiving airplane. And max takeoff gross weight, ISA plus 10, you're flat level 410. It's not a big deal. It's a 10-hour airplane, the 5000. The 6000 is a 13.5-hour airplane, not 13 hours, I would say. So there's nothing special that you require about it. Now, there's a difference between the XRS and the Global 6000, just in the cockpit. So from pilot's perspective, the clients would never know. The engines are the same, the cabin is the same, you know, the three separate compartments that they have back there. And it's an amazing cabin for them. From pilot's perspective, when they take the V-bars away from you and they give you a different flight director, and now you have a different set of systems, very user-friendly, Renee. So like by your pedestal, you can have that entire area turned into an airport diagram. So you can display, you know, it's like a 9-inch display of your entire approach plate chart or whatever you want. And all these displays are interchangeable, so you can display whatever you want. And there's a mouse right there, and I call it a mouse. I mean, you can, you know, change the from MFD to PFD and display whichever fashion that you want it to and whatever you want to display. So it's really user-friendly. But flying it as an airplane, really forgiving in landing because it's got a 100-foot wingspan. When you come in, even if you're coming to a short airport, I mean, you can, you know, let the auto throttle bring it back to you, and it will just give you a soft cushion trailer link, you know, the wheels out there, and you just softly settle down. So you never have to actually fight it to give them a good landing. I mean, trust me, if it's a crosswind day, you will probably, you know, let the people know we have arrived. But otherwise, it's a great airplane from the pilot's perspective.
Fantastic. So let's switch a little bit and talk about from a passenger perspective. You already talked about the 3 different areas of the cabin, but tell me a little bit about some of the feedback that you get from your passengers when you're flying the airplane or after you've landed.
So, you know, when the cabin gets that big, Renee, it's very hard, you know, in the earlier past decade, they've had harder time to give everybody a good temperature that they selected by the armrest. And they're like, okay, it's 17C or it's 21C. And they're like, but it feels a lot hotter. It feels a lot warmer. So it was very hard for them to actually give you an air supply back there that was, comfortable for all the passengers in 3 separate compartments. But this one's designed perfectly. I've never had anybody come out there and like, hey, can you do something about the temperature? Because it seems like it's warmer or colder. No, in that big cabin, they figured out the design. So whatever temperature you select, you get that, and you're separated from the other passenger. There's ample space. There's width in that fuselage, that cabin. You can stand up in it. And the entertainment system, I mean, you can select from different ones out there. There are some really expensive ones, but the sound system has been amazing. The go-go in-flight Wi-Fi and them watching Netflix the entire time has just put the passengers to ease on a long 13-hour flight.
That is a long time to be entertained on an airplane for sure. That's great feedback about the temperature control. I think that's an important passenger feature to know about. I always have a blanket in my bag when I travel for that very reason.
René, sorry to cut you short, but compared to a 605, and this is any 605, 604 pilot will tell you, the moment the passengers sit in, the flight attendant comes up and she's like, hey guys, can you do something about the temperature? It's really warm back there. And you're looking at your selector in the cockpit or back there, and it's selected at a lower temperature. So, Globals have fixed that issue, and I like it.
Well, that's great. So from a capacity standpoint, what's it like in a Global 5000, 6000 from a cabin capacity, comfortable for how many passengers and sleeping arrangements? What's that?
Some seating capacity, if you're going on an 8-9 hour flight, I would say 8 people max. Any more than 8, it's a crowd, because now you're like sitting right next to each other for a long period of time. Any private jet doesn't have space for you to just keep walking around a stretch. If you want, you can go to the galley and bother the flight attendant while she's making your tea and food. The 6,000 is longer, so yeah, you can carry more people. You can carry 14 if you want, but I have never seen more than 6 on a long trip. And more than 6 is hard to get those club seats, into a bed. You can have 3 of these club seats into a bed. Then you got a divan back there where you can turn that into a bed. And then in the 6,000, you have a crew rest area. Some of them do. The one that I fly does have a crew rest area, so the crew can sleep up there. Or if the passenger wants, they can go out there and feel comfortable if the crew doesn't want to go and use it. So I would say not more than 6 to 7 on a 13-hour trip. And just remember, there's front lab for the crew members, and then you have the lab back there for the passengers. So yeah, 6 to 7 people is good. Any more than that, if you're carrying 10 on a 13-hour trip, God, I hope not. That's crowded.
That would be crowded. So what about the galley? What kind of feedback do you get from the flight attendant about the galley in the 5,000 or 6,000?
The design, the S-shaped design is so ergonomical. It's just, they have a larger oven, a larger microwave, the CES panel up there. I mean, it's so user-friendly. I remember back in the days, the XRS or even the 605, the panel was such where, you're trying to select one thing and it will select something else because the screen was never aligned, and you always had to call the maintenance guy to do something about it. And they just shut the airplane off and back on there like, oh, that's fixed. But in the Globals, it was fixed completely. I've never heard any complaints. I don't think any one of these guys are ever going to come out with a good coffee machine for a private jet. So we still carry an Nespresso machine that we bought aftermarket and just kind of stow it away after we've used it. The $35,000 machine that came from the manufacturer is useless. So that's the only problem that I see in any of these guys. Other than that, oven's fantastic, microwave's fantastic. The storage area is, plentiful out there. You can store whatever you want, silver, glass. The trash can used to be an issue back in the 605s. The way you pulled it out, you always used to get stuck. It's larger and it's better and compact at the same time.
Fantastic. Well, how about you talked about storage space in the galley. What about luggage capacity? What do you see with that?
Oh, holy moly. It kills the pilot, because if you're by yourself and whoever gets stuck outside the airplane, the baggage area is above your head, it's about 7 feet. So you have to carry all these 60, 70 pounds of suitcases, and you can carry about 500 pounds easy in a 605. And in the Global, you can carry a lot more. So you can imagine unlimited. I would say you could fit 25 cases of suitcase back there in a Global easy.
And you're climbing up a ladder to put all of them in.
There is no ladder. You're going to have to ask them to bring a conveyor belt out there to help you out. And if that's not available, then you might want to pay someone to help you with the luggage. You know, I normally pay the baggage handlers out there. They come out of the airplane, and two of them kind of help me lift it up, and third pilot, second pilot inside the airplane, he kind of pulls it up and stacks it right. Yeah.
Great. So is the baggage compartment accessible from within the aircraft?
It is pressurized, and it is accessible from the inside of the aircraft. Yes.
Okay. Through the lab, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Great. So back to flying the airplane, which I know is your joy because your face lights up with this. Tell me a little bit about the climb and the performance of the Global.
The performance, ISA plus 10, I'm comparing this to the next heavy jet that I've flown, which is the 605. It just blows through the roof. You can carry 48,000 pounds of fuel, 5 passengers, 6 passengers, 1,500 pounds of payload, and it will give you a good 2,000 feet of climb. And you can climb all the way to 380. You might have to reduce the climb a little bit to 1,000 foot or so, just because you want to reduce the deck angle. And you can climb to 38 or 41 easy, no problems. And the cruise, 8.0 is the child's play. You can do more than 8.0 anytime you want. So from a climb perspective, that airplane is fantastic. It's the best one that I have flown so far. But also, René, I've never, flown a G5 or anything else as big as the Global to compare it to.
Great. How reliable have you found the Global to be?
The 6000 is very reliable. The only problem it had is, and it was a big issue, the first 6000 that had come out, apparently somebody in Australia, and it might just be a legend because I never really got confirmation, but this did come through Bombardier sales guys, that somehow the GPS, the watch that the clock that they have in there, did not align or had some sort of an issue, and that clock, it created a shutdown of the aircraft. It could not find its position. I shouldn't even say this because I don't know the whole story, but I knew that it was bad enough that they had to go out there and talk to everybody about it and tell them, hey guys, make sure your clock is showing the right time and it is showing the right place and that kind of stuff. So I remember that being the only issue, and it's been 4 years since I've heard this whole thing happen. So I'm not really sure what exactly happened on this. It might just be a legend with the clock, but that's the only problem that I know the Global 6000 had ever faced. Other than that, it's a great airplane. It's an old design. It comes from the XRS. The only thing they changed, René, was just basically the cockpit. It's got the ProLine Vision cockpit, better synthetic system, synthetic vision. So that's the only thing that has changed in the airplane.
Wow, that's a great report. What about dispatch reliability? What's been your experience there?
100%. Never failed.
100%. You've never had an AOG?
No, never had an AOG.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. So are there any, the vision sounds amazing. Have there been any idiosyncrasies with that you've been like, wow, if they could just do this, like if you were the developer, what would be the thing that you would put on your wish list for the next version of the airplane?
René, I cannot complain. It does the performance for me. It does the weight and balance for me. I just have to put in the data and it tells me all those things. I'm coming from the days of spaghetti charts where I had to go in a big binder and look at, okay, plus 2 knots of tailwind, 0.5 gradient up on the runway, okay, a wet runway, okay, add plus 2 to the V1 and VR. I'm looking at a, iPad sort of back there, and it's like, hey, what's your weight? Where's the passenger? How much fuel do you have? Okay, you're good to go. The runway wet, that's fine. This is your V1, this is your VR. And it displays the graph for you. You can print that out, and if you ever get SAFA checked, that's your weight and balance right there. So there's no idiosyncrasies that I have noticed in the Vision cockpit. I come from the steam gauges. So for me, it's been like a Christmas gift. And that's the best thing that could ever happen to me. I don't know how else to improve it. It has improved my spatial orientation so much. You put the HUD down, the airports have this dome over them, and you can visualize, okay, so you're looking at all these BORs, nav aids, okay, that's the airport because it's got a dome over it. You got the flare indicators as you're coming in. You got a small airplane up there, and it will start shooting these kind of lines up there, and it's telling you to flare because you're coming in landing Cat 2, a Category 2 ILS. So, I mean, somebody really went out there and spoke to the pilots and did their homework and gave us an airplane that is joy to fly and, you know, easy to handle. So I love the avionics.
So to me, sitting in the back, that tells me that it's probably a safer experience all around, especially because it has truly, and this is a little bit of a pun, but it has a global reach. So you're flying probably oftentimes into airports that you have never landed at before. And I think that that probably really improves your workload and the safety of the passengers. Absolutely.
You know, talk about CFIT, right? Control flight into terrain. I mean, now FAA is still talking about it, how this is still a major cause of issues of accidents out there. So from that perspective, you put the HUD down. When you go to St. Moritz, Maiden, you got these mountain ridges in the sides that are almost touching your wing, or you go to Innsbruck, into Austria. I mean, these are the airports where you need spatial orientation. Having said that, automation does make us lazy. You know, we start relying upon these things, and, you know, we are moving towards a day that will come where, you know, there'll be just one guy in the cockpit and, you know, the other guy will be a robot. So I think automation is moving forward that way. But I just like the fact that I have more information available to me when I need it. So in case of emergency, the same information is available to me is when I have a non-emergency, non-stressful, just an easy glide to the runway. So I like it.
No, that's fantastic. Those are all great observations. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing all this information about the Global 5000, 6000 with me. Do you have anything else you want to add about the aircraft before we wrap this up?
No. I wish I had something else to compare it to, like a Dassault 7X or 8X or a G550 or a G650. From my experience, I mean, this airplane is a Christmas gift for me. So, hey, if people out there listening to this, buy more Global 6000s.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you.